Hey guys, so people ask a lot. They ask, what does psychedelic drugs feel like? What do they do? What do you see? What do you learn? What is it like? And for the longest time, I had the hardest time explaining to people really what it was like. It's hard to put your tongue on it. I think that's what people say. It's hard to really get the words out that explain it, and really, you can't explain it in totality. It's sort of impossible. But I heard this quote recently, and this quote comes from a famous mathematician and philosopher named Bertrand Russell. And I just thought it was the best way of explaining what these things do in a very small amount of words. And he said, psychedelics split your memory from perception. And the way that I understand this, and the way that, it's become clear to me after, in retrospect, thinking about all of the trips that I had, is your memory makes who you are. All of your life experiences, besides like, your natural behaviors and instincts, those things inside of you, your memory and your experience here sort of forms who you are. So do genetics, but your perspective is formed by your memory. And once you take away the memory, once you split the memory from your perception of the world, things feel completely alien. You begin to see the world as a blank slate. Now, in a low dose form, like in a low dose form of this, let's say you take 1 tab of acid, or maybe you take 3 grams of mushrooms, you are still present in this vessel, in this human body, but you don't feel like you, and it doesn't feel like you're in a place you recognize. It almost feels like you're an alien. Okay, it feels like you're an alien from a different dimension, a different something that me, Oliver, has never known. And then you come here, it's like you just landed here in this head, in this brain, and you look around and you're like, what is this reality? This is insane. I don't recognize any of this. This is absurd. It's so much. And that's sort of at a low dose. I don't know what it's like at an extremely high dose, what you would call a heroic dose. I would imagine that you are purely in spirit form. You're no longer in a body. You have ascended, but you're stuck here in this body, and it's just so hard to describe to people. But I just think that is an amazing quote, and it's a good way to explain to somebody who's never taken them, who's curious, or who is thinking about taking them. And don't get me wrong, it is a terrifying experience, and in my spiritual belief, who you really become there is who you really are. That is your soul. Okay. While we're here, we become something, we experience, we form, and we cultivate this thing called an ego and an identity. Okay, and over time that becomes harder and harder and harder. And as a child, you don't have much of that. You're more of a free soul. You're more of a free spirit. I look at babies and I see them, and they're just looking around the world, and they don't know, they're not making sense of this yet. Okay, but over time, you become accustomed to these things. You become nurtured to this reality. And you take these things, and it really feels like it reduces you to your true form. Okay, and these things can be terrifying because you can see how dark some things are, but you can also see how beautiful some things are. You can feel things better. Not only your five senses, not only your taste, your vision, your hearing, your smell. All of those things are amplified, but your spiritual sense, your soul, your emotional sense, you can feel it, and whenever I come down from these things, and whenever you come down, you sort of come back to human form. It's almost like you're battling. It's almost like, okay, your spirit body, your spirit is trying to stay, but it's leaving. And your human self, your identity, is coming back, okay? And during these times when I was coming down, I would think about all of the things that go on in the world, like war, and and I know this is super cliche, and it's just a super old trope, and everybody's said it, but you think about war, and it just doesn't make any sense to you because these two things are battling, and it just seems so stupid. It's so, it just seems so stupid. Um, you just have a new, you feel like reborn, and that's another thing people say all the time about it, but you can't really explain that to people. But you come back with this new, after having your perspective shattered, and you're given this blank slate to see reality. You're sort of reborn. You sort of see the world in a new way. And I think sometimes, on the dangerous side of it, sometimes that can make people see the world in a really dark way. And it certainly made me see it in a dark way, but you also have to look on the positive side of things. And it makes you search for what the purpose is. Um, but yeah, I just think that that is a beautiful quote, and that's something I wanted to share with all of you. So thank you.